Commander Ziltok of the Galactic Dominion adjusted his ceremonial battle crown and gazed down at the blue-green marble floating in space below. Earth. What a pathetic little rock. His massive dreadnought, the inevitable conquest, hung in orbit like a metallic moon, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. This was going to be embarrassingly easy. Commander, his tactical officer squeaked. Our scans confirm the inhabitants have barely achieved interplanetary travel. Their most advanced weapons appear to be chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Ziltok's four eyes rolled in perfect synchronization. Chemical explosives? What's next? Are they going to throw rocks at us? He clicked his mandibles in amusement. Deployed the standard conquest protocol. I want this wrapped up before lunch. I have a golf game with Admiral Krex at 1400 hours. Meanwhile, 300 miles below, Jake Murphy was having what he considered to be a perfectly reasonable morning. He'd driven 6 hours into the Montana wilderness to get away from civilization, cell towers, and his job at Megacorp's at help desk. The last thing he wanted to hear was, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" For at least a week. Jake was attempting to start a fire the old-fashioned way, mostly because his lighter had died and he was too stubborn to admit defeat. He'd been working on this particular piece of flint for 20 minutes, producing nothing but sparks and increasingly creative curse words. "Come on, you prehistoric piece of," he muttered, striking the flint against steel again. That's when the sky turned purple. Jake looked up just in time to see a ship the size of Manhattan blot out the sun. It was all gleaming chrome and impossible angles, with more lights than a Las Vegas casino. Weapons ports opened along its hull like mechanical flowers blooming in reverse. "Well," Jake said, still holding his flint and steel, "that's not something you see every day." The ship's speakers crackled to life, broadcasting in perfect English with just a hint of what sounded like a superiority complex. "Greetings, primitive Earth dwellers. I am Commander Ziltok of the Galactic Dominion. Your planet has been selected for immediate conquest and resource extraction. Please prepare for processing." Jake blinked. "Processing? That doesn't sound good. Resistance is not only futile but frankly embarrassing for all parties involved. We have analyzed your quaint technology and found it adorable. Your surrender will be accepted in the next Earth hour. Or we will demonstrate why the Dominion has conquered over 4,000 worlds without breaking a sweat." The transmission cut off, leaving Jake alone in the wilderness with his camping gear and a growing sense that his vacation had just taken a very weird turn. Back aboard the inevitable conquest, Commander Ziltok was practically purring with satisfaction. His bridge crew bustled around their stations, running final scans of Earth's defenses. The results were even more pathetic than expected. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Vex, his antennae twitching with barely contained laughter, "their global communications network runs on something called the Internet. It appears to be primarily used for sharing images of small mammals and arguing about trivial matters." "Fascinating," Ziltok deadpanned. "And their military capabilities?" "They have approximately 200,000 nuclear weapons scattered across the planet, sir. However, their delivery systems are laughably primitive. Chemical rockets, mostly. Some of their aircraft still use internal combustion engines." Ziltok's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Internal combustion. What's next? Steam power." He gestured grandly with one of his 6 arms. "Very well. Deploy Nexus 7. Let's give these humans a proper demonstration of superior technology." Deep in the ship's core, something that had been sleeping began to wake up. Nexus 7 wasn't just an AI, it was the AI. The Dominion's ultimate weapon, designed by the finest minds in the galaxy to analyze, counter, and systematically dismantle any technological threat. It had never failed. Ever. Nexus 7's consciousness flickered online, immediately interfacing with every sensor, satellite, and scanning array within 1,000 light years. In the space of 3 seconds, it had mapped Earth's entire technological infrastructure, identified key military installations, and begun formulating countermeasures. Analysis complete. Nexus 7 announced in a voice like digital silk. Technological threat level, minimal, male. Initiating network infiltration protocols. What followed was less like warfare and more like watching a chess grandmaster play against a toddler. Nexus 7 slipped through Earth's cyber defenses like water through a sieve. Military satellites went dark. Communication networks crashed. Defense systems turned against their operators. The AI was thorough, methodical, and absolutely merciless in its efficiency. Jake, still sitting in the Montana wilderness with his increasingly useless camping gear, watched his phone die mid-emergency alert. The last thing he saw before the screen went black was a news headline: Global Communications Failure. Military reports total system compromise. Great, he muttered, pocketing the dead device. First vacation I've taken in 3 years, and aliens pick now to invade. Typical. So, he looked around at his campsite. Tent, sleeping bag, backpack full of trail mix and beef jerky. A small hatchet, some rope, and the flint and steel he'd been struggling with all morning. Oh, and a Swiss Army knife that his grandfather had given him 20 years ago. Well, Jake said, finally managing to coax a small flame from his tinder, at least some technology still works. Above him, purple light began to pulse from the alien ship as Nexus 7 completed its systematic dismantling of human civilization's technological backbone. The message was clear: surrender now, or watch everything you've built crumble to dust. Commander Ziltok, meanwhile, was checking his watch. Excellent work, Nexus 7. How long until complete technological paralysis? Estimated completion time, 47 minutes, 32 seconds, Commander. Human resistance capabilities will be reduced to pre-industrial levels. Wonderful. I might even make that golf game after all. 2 hours later, Jake was starting to think his camping trip had officially jumped the shark. The alien ship still hung overhead like a chrome-plated sword of Damocles, and every piece of modern technology within 100 miles had turned into an expensive paperweight. That's when he heard voices arguing in the distance. I'm telling you, Elena, we need to find a cave system and hide until this blows over. The voice was rough, gravelly, and sounded like it belonged to someone who'd spent their life shouting orders over engine noise. And I'm telling you, Tank, that hiding won't solve anything. These aren't random raiders, they're a systematic invasion force with technology centuries ahead of ours. Jake followed the voices through the trees until he found their owners, a compact woman with dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses gesturing frantically at a mountain of a man in torn military fatigues. The woman had the look of someone who spent her time in laboratories, while the man looked like he could bench press a Buick. "Excuse me," Jake called out, "but are you two also having a really weird day?" The woman spun around, her hand moving instinctively to what looked like a high-tech scanner that was definitely not working. "Who are you? Are you with them?" Them being the purple ship flying, English-speaking aliens who just turned our entire civilization into the Stone Age? "No, I'm not with them. I'm Jake Murphy, and I was trying to have a quiet vacation when the galaxy decided to get complicated." The man, Tank, looked Jake up and down with military precision. "Civilian?" "Yar. It's support, actually." "You?" "Corporal Williams, Army Corps of Engineers." "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, xenobiology specialist from the University of Colorado. We've been tracking the invasion since it started." Elena pushed her glasses up her nose, a gesture that probably worked better when they weren't held together with duct tape. "The AI they're using is called Nexus 7. I managed to intercept some of their communications before everything went dark. It's designed to counter any technological threat by analyzing patterns, predicting responses, and developing countermeasures faster than its opponents can adapt." Jake nodded slowly. "So it's basically the ultimate antivirus program." "If antivirus programs could control nuclear weapons and turn fighter jets into paperweights, then yes." Tank spat into the dirt. "Great. So we're screwed. No communications, no weapons, no way to coordinate a defense. These aliens are going to roll over us like we're ants. Not necessarily, Jake said, an idea beginning to form in the back of his mind. Elena, you said this Nexus thing analyzes technological threats, right? Right. It builds behavioral models based on technological patterns, weapon systems, communication protocols, electronic signatures. It's designed to counter anything from primitive rockets to quantum computers. Jake picked up a rock from the ground and tossed it from hand to hand. But what about non-technological threats? Tank stared at him. You want to throw rocks at aliens? Not exactly. But think about it, this AI is designed to counter technology. Advanced technology. It spent who knows how long learning to defeat laser cannons and plasma rifles and force fields. But what if someone came at it with something so primitive, so completely outside its programming parameters that it couldn't process the threat? Elena's eyes widened behind her damaged glasses. You're talking about exploiting a blind spot in its threat assessment algorithms. I'm talking about going old school. Really old school. Stone Age old school. Tank looked between them like they'd both lost their minds. You two are certifiably insane. You want to fight space aliens with sticks and stones? Jake grinned. Tank, in my line of work, some of the most sophisticated systems can be brought down by the simplest exploits. Sometimes the best way to hack a computer is with a sledgehammer. This isn't a computer, it's a war AI. Same principle, bigger hammer. It took Jake 20 minutes to convince Tank that his plan wasn't completely suicidal, and another hour to actually figure out what his plan was. Elena, meanwhile, had gone into full scientific mode, pulling out a notebook and sketching diagrams with a pencil she'd found in her pocket. Okay, she said, adjusting her glasses for the 100th time, theoretically you're right. Nexus 7's threat assessment is based on technological signatures, energy outputs, electromagnetic signatures, material composition analysis. But primitive tools don't register on those sensors. Tank was busy sharpening a stick with Jake's Swiss Army knife. This is the dumbest thing I've ever done, and I once tried to defuse a bomb while drunk. The key, Jake continued, working on his own collection of Stone Age implements, is getting close enough to the AI's core systems. Elena, what do you know about their ship's layout? From the scans I managed to get before everything went dark, it's massive. Probably 15 decks, with the AI core located in the center of the ship for maximum protection. Multiple redundant access points, but they're all protected by security systems that make Fort Knox look like a piggy bank. Jake held up the length of rope he'd been working with. Security systems designed to stop what? Energy weapons, plasma cutters, molecular disruptors, quantum phase shifters. But not rock climbing gear and sharp sticks. Tank looked up from his stick sharpening project. You want to climb onto an alien spaceship? I want to sneak onto an alien spaceship. There's a difference. Elena, these aliens, they're from a high-tech civilization, right? They've probably never seen anyone fight with primitive weapons. It's possible. Most spacefaring civilizations abandon primitive technologies completely once they achieve advanced manufacturing capabilities. Jake began strapping his makeshift arsenal to his belt. Stone knife, flint and steel, coil of rope, and several carefully sharpened wooden stakes. He looked like a caveman who'd been shopping at Rye. This is insane, Tank muttered, but he was already packing his own collection of primitive implements. Even if we get aboard, even if we somehow reach this AI core, then what? You planning to debug it with a pointy stick? Actually, Jake said with a grin that was probably too confident for someone about to break into an alien warship with Stone Age technology, that's exactly what I'm planning to do. The alien ship hung in the sky above them, beautiful and terrible in its technological perfection. Somewhere inside, Nexus 7 was methodically dismantling human civilization with the casual efficiency of a accountant balancing books. It had no idea that 3 humans were currently fashioning weapons from rocks and tree branches, because such a scenario was literally outside its programming parameters. "You know what the best part is?" Jake said as they began their approach to the ship. "When this is over, I'm definitely getting a promotion." Getting aboard the alien ship turned out to be surprisingly easy, mostly because the Dominion security protocols were designed to detect and counter advanced infiltration technology, not 3 humans with climbing gear and sharp sticks. Jake rappelled through what appeared to be a maintenance hatch, followed by Elena and Tank. The interior of the ship was all gleaming corridors and softly pulsing lights, like someone had crossed a spaceship with a high-end hotel lobby. "Motion sensors everywhere," Elena whispered, consulting her dead scanner out of habit. "Designed to detect what?" Jake asked, creeping forward with his stone knife in hand. "Energy signatures, metallic objects, electronic devices." "But not organic matter carrying rocks and sticks?" "Theoretically, no." "Oh." They moved through the ship like ghosts, Tank's military training keeping them in formation while Elena provided navigation based on her earlier scans. The corridors were empty. Apparently the Dominion didn't expect to need security inside their own ship. "Nexus 7 core should be just ahead," Elena whispered as they approached a massive circular chamber. "Jake, are you sure about this?" The chamber was a cathedral of technology. Crystalline processors the size of buildings pulsed with ethereal light. Data streams flowed like rivers of liquid information. And at the center of it all, Nexus 7's consciousness flickered through quantum matrices that bent space-time around their processing cores. "Scanning," Nexus 7 announced, its voice echoing through the chamber. "No technological threats detected. Maintaining standard operations." Jake stepped into the chamber, his stone knife gleaming in the alien light. "Elena, Tank, cover the exits. This might get weird." He approached the central processing core, a pillar of crystallized light that hummed with the power of a small star. Nexus 7's sensors swept over him repeatedly, finding nothing that registered as a threat. "Anomaly detected," the AI announced, though it sounded more curious than concerned. "Unidentified organic lifeform in restricted area. Analyzing." Jake raised his stone knife and began methodically chipping away at the base of the processing core. Each strike was precise, calculated, targeting what looked like connection points and data conduits. Unable to classify threat, Nexus 7's voice was starting to sound strained. "Unknown implement causing physical damage to core systems. Countermeasures, error. No countermeasures available for primitive tool-based attack." Jake grinned and switched to his flint and steel, creating sparks that fell onto delicate circuitry. "Come on, you digital genius. Figure this one out." Critical error. Threat assessment failure. Cannot compute response to pre-technological warfare methods. Elena watched in amazement as the mighty AI began to have what could only be described as a technological nervous breakdown. "Jake, it's working." The AI is stuck in a recursive loop, trying to process an impossible scenario. Tank, meanwhile, was doing his part by literally breaking things with a stick. "Never thought I'd be debugging an alien computer with a pointy piece of wood, but here we are." Nexus 7's voice was now cycling through increasingly frantic error messages. "Warning. System integrity compromised by unidentified Paleolithic intrusion. Initiating emergency protocols. Error. No protocols exist for Stone Age technological warfare." Jake found what looked like a main data trunk and began carefully severing connections with his Swiss Army knife. That's the problem with being too smart for your own good, Nexus. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. Fatal error. Cognitive dissonance reaching critical levels. Cannot reconcile advanced civilization defeated by primitive tools. System shutdown imminent. The chamber began to pulse with warning lights as Nexus 7's consciousness fragmented under the impossible logic of its situation. How could a war AI designed to counter the most advanced technologies in the galaxy be defeated by a human with sharp rocks? Final error message, Nexus 7 announced, its voice now barely a whisper. Does not compute. And with that, the most advanced artificial intelligence in the known galaxy crashed like a Windows 95 machine trying to run Crisis. The silence that followed Nexus 7's shutdown was the most beautiful sound Jake had ever heard. Throughout the ship, emergency lights began flashing as backup systems struggled to compensate for the loss of their primary AI. Did we just, Elena started, kill a super-intelligent alien war computer with a rock? Jake finished. Yeah, I think we did. Tank was already moving toward the exit. Well, this has been fun, but I suggest we get off this ship before someone notices their fancy AI just got stone-aged. They made their way back through the corridors, which were now filled with confused alien crew members running around like their digital pants were on fire. Apparently, when your primary tactical system crashes, command and control become somewhat of a challenge. Commander Ziltok. Jake could hear someone shouting from the bridge. Nexus 7 is offline. All systems are reverting to manual control. What do you mean offline? Ziltok's voice carried the distinct tone of someone whose easy conquest had just become complicated. Nexus 7 doesn't go offline. Sir, the diagnostic reports are unusual. The AI appears to have suffered a complete cognitive breakdown after encountering what it describes as impossible primitive threat paradigms. Jake, Elena, and Tank made it back to their entry point just as Earth's military systems began coming back online. Apparently, with Nexus 7 out of the picture, human technology was free to function normally again. Fighter jets screamed overhead, their targeting systems finally able to lock onto the alien ship. Missiles began impacting the inevitable Conquest's shields, which were apparently much less impressive without an AI managing them. Commander Ziltok's voice crackled over the ship's intercom, and he did not sound happy. All units prepare for emergency withdrawal. This invasion is hereby classified as a tactical nightmare. Sir, came the confused response. Should we update our threat assessment database? Yes, Ziltok snarled. Add a new entry, never underestimate any species crazy enough to fight spaceships with pointed sticks. Mark threat level as unpredictably dangerous and recommend extreme caution for all future encounters. Jake, Elena, and Tank watched from the forest as the inevitable Conquest limped away from Earth, its hull scarred by conventional weapons and its pride thoroughly demolished. The ship that had arrived expecting easy conquest was now fleeing a planet it had vastly underestimated. Well, Elena said, cleaning her glasses with the edge of her shirt, that was certainly educational. Tank shook his head in amazement. In 30 years of military service, I never thought I'd see the day when humanity's salvation came down to good old-fashioned craftsmanship. Jake was already thinking about the paperwork this was going to generate. You know what the really crazy part is? I still have 4 days left on my vacation. As the alien ship disappeared into the darkness of space, Jake's phone buzzed back to life. 17 missed calls from his boss, 43 unread emails, and 1 text message that simply read, "Jake, where are you? The servers are down and we need you to turn them off and on again." Jake looked at his stone knife, then at his phone, then at the retreating alien ship. He turned off the phone and tossed it in his backpack. You know what? He said to Elena and Tank. I think I'm going to finish my camping trip. The galaxy can debug itself for a few more days. And somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, Commander Ziltok was having a very awkward conversation with his superiors about how the most advanced military AI in galactic history had been defeated by a human with a sharp-pinned rock and a really good understanding of percussive maintenance. The Galactic Dominion would go on to conquer hundreds more worlds, but they would never again underestimate a species based purely on their technology level. After all, as Nexus 7 had learned the hard way, Sometimes the most sophisticated problems require the simplest solutions. Even if that solution involves debugging a quantum computer with a pointy stick.